and welcome to For We Are Many. This is Trisha.
And I'm Chelsea.
And here, let me stop that screen share there of that. There we go. What's up, guys? We are here tonight to read Bell Hook's book, Killing Rage, Ending Racism. This one is a massive fucking eye-opener, and I'm surprised more people have not heard of it or read it, given that it's been out for 26 years. But the things that Bell had to discuss in this are still fucking prevalent today, still applicable today. And you'll see what I mean when we get diving into this here. Just a moment.
Special thanks to Wade for buying us the audio. We are kind of still figuring all this out right now, but yeah. People that help us with finances are cool.
Right? Oh, special thank you to you for sending me the book. Seriously, I dove right in as soon as I got it and was just like, holy shit, man.
Hey, listen, books are the cheapest and fastest thing to send, so.
Indeed. And I love getting books. Hi, Wade. There he is, the man of the hour that made this shit possible, or at least easier on our vocal cords. Otherwise, we'd have been reading the whole works. And just from experience, when you're reading entire chapters and also doing discussion on the material, throat gets a little sore by the end of the day. So thank you, Wade, because this is such a helpful tool.
And this is playing from my phone this time. I don't know if it will be different, if we can figure this out. But if anybody cannot hear anything very clearly, just type it in there and let us know.
Yep. We tried to get it pulled up on the laptop, but the app that it's through is not being cooperative. It only wants to be on
people with learning disabilities, and I don't have any learning disabilities, and I had to learn a lot that I didn't know how to do. So it's really not very helpful.
Right. I'm seriously wondering how that page is claiming to be a point of accessibility.
I'm like, I don't have learning disability, but now I feel like I do. So yeah.
Right. That endeavor into trying to get the website to work definitely made me feel like there was...
She was screaming at me. She was giving me anxiety.
Yeah, that.
I'm just kidding. I can start whenever you want me to. And like I said, if it sounds weird, let me know.
Okay. I'm going to crank the volume up on here. If you want to do the phone and stuff.
Yeah, mine's all the way up.
Okay. Beautiful. All right. We are going to start with the introduction and then go into chapter 1. So.
Or the introduction.
Yeah, depending on...
The introduction hits us hard, too.
Indeed.
All right.
I keep the letters that I write to you in a folder with a postcard attached. It is a reproduction of the image of a black man and woman in South Africa in 1949, walking down a road side by side. The caption reads, "Seek what is true." It is the seeking that brings us together again and again that will lead us home. Page Roman 6 is blank. Page Roman 7. Contents. Essay 1, Introduction to 31. Essay 5, page 86. Page 119. Essay 12, Healing on Essay 15.
Oh, goodness. I thought it was at the right point here when you paused it.
Page 1.
There we go.
Page 1. If you have any comments regarding this recording, please report them to us. Please be specific about page, tape, and track number about race. We usually situate our discussion within a frame of turf as hard politics, a playing field where women do not really belong.
Oh my. Fucking
1.
God.
Reader's Note 1. If you
Learning
have any
curve.
comments on this recording, please report them to us. Please be specific about page, tape, and track numbers to which you refer.
I'm just going to leave
Return
it.
to text. Essay 1. Introduction. Race talk.
Cool.
When race and racism are the topic in public discourse, the voices that speak are male. There is no large body of social and political critique by women on the topics of race and racism. When women write about race, we usually situate our discussion within a framework where the focus is not centrally on race. We write and speak about race and gender, race and representation, etc. Cultural refusal to listen to and legitimize the power of women speaking about the politics of race and racism in America is a direct reflection of a long tradition of sexist and racist thinking, which has also always represented race and racism as male turf, as hard politics, a playing field where women do not really belong. Traditionally seen as a discourse between men just as feminism has been seen as a discourse of women, it presumes that there is only one gender when it comes to blackness, so black women's voices do not count. How can they if our very existence is not acknowledged? It presumes that the business of race is down and dirty stuff, and therefore, like all male locker rooms, spaces no real woman would want to enter. Page 2. Since white women's bodies embody the sexist, racist fantasy of real womanness, they must not sully themselves by claiming a political voice within public discourse about race. When race politics are the issue, it is one of the rare moments when white men prick up their ears to hear what black men have to say. No one wants to interrupt those moments of interracial, homosocial, patriarchal bonding to hear women speak. Given these institutionalized exclusions, it is not surprising that so few women choose to publicly talk race. In the past year, I have been on many panels with black men discussing race. Time and time again, I find the men talking to one another as though nothing I or any other woman has to say on the topic could be a meaningful, insightful addition to the discussion. And if I or any other black woman chooses to speak about race from a standpoint that includes feminism, we are seen as derailing the more important political discussion, not adding a necessary dimension. When this sexist silencing occurs, it usually happens with the tacit complicity of audiences who have over time learned to think always of race within blackness as a male thing, and to assume that the real political leaders emerging from such public debates will always and only be male. The voices of progressive black women means that black political discourse on race always suffers from critical gaps in theoretical vision and concrete strategy. Despite backlash and or the appropriation of a public rhetoric that denounces sexism, most black male leaders are not committed to challenging and changing sexism in daily life. That means that there is a major gap between what they say and how they deal with women on the street, in the workplace, at home, and between the sheets. Concurrently, many black women are self-censoring and self-silencing for fear that talking race desexualizes, makes one less feminine. Page 3. Or that...
All right. I lied in the private chat. I thought about it. It's kind of irritating because this app, it will like close out on my phone and it'll still play it, but I'll have to completely unlock the phone to pause it. And so it's really irritating. So I think we could probably go like a couple pages at a time and then just stop. Because I still did read I prefer to read it by myself before we do this, and so I have done that, and I've highlighted certain things. And some of it, like with the first chapter, I didn't highlight a whole lot because there are still things that I don't necessarily know. Obviously, because I'm not black, so
won't have the lived experience to speak from.
The thing that I specifically liked was towards the beginning with the second page. It says, since white women's bodies embody the sexist, racist fantasy of real womanness, they must not sully themselves by claiming a political voice within public discourse about race. And it didn't really hit me in any specific kind of way. It just, the experiences that I've had, they've all been varied. But once you actually do start to try to make things intersectional and talk about these things in a more complex manner, that usually is the thing that starts to freak people out. And I mean, I feel like that happens with women in general, but with white women, it's specifically just like, why do you care? And that could be coming from somebody that just wants to make you feel stupid, or that could come from somebody that just doesn't trust you, which is also understandable. I don't know what you thought about that, or if anything in those first couple pages stood out to you also.
I think it's very important that she points out there. She says, no one wants to interrupt those moments of interracial, homosocial, patriarchal bonding to hear weak. And that's one of those things that we often run into in political spaces of, when it's something specific like this, that, oh, the men are speaking, that they don't feel like there is room there for women to actually have a stance, a perspective, something to bring to the table about the subject. When, if anything, we, can understand it the least what it is to be treated with some, and be able to point that out of like, well, wait a minute, no, there is actually a need for women to speak here on this subject. And I think that's a big part of what she was trying to point out in this book in general, is that for far too long, women's voices have been silenced on so many fucking subjects, but especially when it comes to that intersectionality of race and gender.
Yeah, it's like racism is definitely a problem, and our little troll here can stop worrying. We are communists, and we will not die, and there is no white guilt here either. There's only discussion.
Right.
But that's the thing that usually is also used to silence women as well, is that
Right.
if race is mentioned, then everything else underneath that, as far as misogyny or assault or sexism, is not taken seriously. So it's just that if you point out one offense, another offense is used to distract from that, instead of looking at everything as a whole. If we are all connected as a whole in a positive manner, then obviously we're all connected as a whole in a negative one as well.
Right.
And then there was a lot more of a complex answer to these problems than just saying black and white. I hate that. I always hate to use black and white in subjects like these, just because it feels ironic. But yeah, I don't know.
Fair.
I'm like, I don't mean it literally, but whatever. If Rob would like to message one of us so that I don't keep having to look at this motherfucker, that would be great. But I'm going to go ahead and push play again.
Go for it.
Answer these discussions places one in direct competition with black males who feel that this is their turf. Facing this resistance and daring to talk race, to be as political as we want to be, is the contemporary challenge to all black women, especially progressive black females on the left. Certainly, fear of male disapproval or silencing has not been a factor curtailing my entering a political discussion of race. I find myself reluctant to talk race because it hurts. It is painful to think long and hard about race and racism in the United States. Confronting the great resurgence of white supremacist organizations and seeing the rhetoric and beliefs of these groups surface as part of the accepted discourse in every aspect of daily life in the United States startles, frightens, and is enough to throw one back into silence. No one in the dominant culture seems to consider the impact it has on African Americans and people of color in general to turn on radios and televisions, look at magazines and books which tell us information like that reported in Andrew Hacker's book, Two Nations. Many white folks believe that, quote, Africans and Americans who trace their origins to that continent are seen as languishing at a lower evolutionary level than members of other races, end quote. By the time we reach this passage in Hacker's book, we have already heard it, at some cocktail party, in the grocery store, on the subway, or in a fancy museum where folks are dismissing and de-intellectualizing the art of black artists hanging on the wall. These days, white racism can let it all hang out, hold nothing back. The anti-black backlash is so fierce it astounds. It comes to us via what Nobel Prize-winning writer Toni Morrison calls, quote, race talk, the explicit insertion into everyday life of racial signs and symbols that have no meaning other than pressing African Americans to the lowest level of the racial hierarchy, end quote. Page 4. For this to happen, Morrison adds, quote, popular culture, shaped by film, theater, advertising, the press, television, and literature, is heavily engaged in race talk, end quote. In many ways, race talk surfaces as the vernacular discourse of white supremacy. It repeatedly tells us that blacks are inferior to whites, more likely to commit crimes, come from broken homes, are all on welfare, and if we are not, we are still whining and begging old Massa and kindly Miss Anne for a handout. Even when we win literary prizes, it lets the world know that up in the big house, folks are not really sure that judging was fair, or the writing was good, or the writing that good. And if we put on airs and act like we fancy intellectuals, there is always some pure soul ready to let the world know we ain't as we seem. Meanwhile, back at the plantation, in an entire book that painstakingly documents the harsh reality of white supremacy and anti-black sentiment, Hacker can undermine his own research with statements like, quote, something called racism obviously exists, end quote. Even though he continues and states, quote, but racism is real, an incubus that has haunted this country since Europeans first set foot on the continent. It goes beyond prejudice and discrimination and even transcends bigotry, largely because it arises from outlooks and assumptions of which we are largely unaware, end quote. The we of unaware does not include black people. We do not have the luxury to be unaware, and when we act unaware, it is just that, an act. Psychologists have a name for it, denial. Yet come to think of it, can it not be that white folks are into denial big time themselves? That denial keeps us all as unaware as we want to be. Denial is, in fact, a cornerstone of white European culture, and it has been called out by the major critical voices who speak to.
I just like that the troll is listening to this right now because it's hitting all of his bullshit right where it starts.
Right. And not to mention, Quint, you're adding to our viewership.
You're
literally
so much cooler. It's like we
right.
predicted that this would happen because we're witches too.
I just find it fucking hilarious because literally what he is doing right now is crying about how men don't hold the power that they used to and wish that they still had. This is fragility.
Also, Midol doesn't actually work. So you should take like Excedrin or ibuprofen. It works better. So I assume that you don't have any girlfriends, but if you do, don't give them Midol.
Right. It doesn't work very well. It sucks.
You're welcome.
Right.
You want me to go ahead again?
Sure.
Okay.
And from the location of whiteness, Marx, Freud, Foucault. After all, if we pretend racism does not exist, that we do not know what it is or how to change it, it never has to go away. Page 5. Overt racial discrimination is not as fashionable as it once was, and that is why everyone can pretend racism does not exist. So we need to talk about the vernacular discourse of neo-colonial white supremacy, similar to racism, but not the same thing. Everyone in this society, women and men, boys and girls, who want to see an end to racism, an end to white supremacy, must begin to engage in a counter-hegemonic race talk that is fiercely and passionately calling for change. For some of us, talking race means moving past the pain to speak, not getting caught, trapped, silenced by the sadness and sorrow. I was not born into a world where anyone wanted me to talk about race. I was born into a world where folks talked about crackers, coons, and spooks with hushed voices and contorted facial expressions. I came into that world with no clue of the pain hidden behind the laughter, the performance art that took racism and made it into a little show. How they see us versus how we see ourselves. These shows made us laugh as children. Even though we lived in the midst of life-threatening racial apartheid, we had not yet seen racism clearly. It had not stared us down. It had no face. We were ourselves before it came. They wanted us to be that way, not to see racism. Old black folks. They wanted us to have a childhood, full of fun and innocence and sweet things. A childhood without racial pain. In those days, we did not realize that the pain would never be acknowledged, not even by the folks who loved us. that acknowledging it would alienate and estrange us from the world we knew most intimately. Nowadays, it has become fashionable for white and black folks alike to act like they do, but to act like they do not have the slightest clue as to why black folks might want to separate, to be together in some corner or neighborhood, or even at some dining table in a world where we are surrounded by whiteness. Page 6. It is not a mystery. Those of us who remember living in the midst of racial apartheid know that the separate spaces, the times apart from whiteness, were for sanctuary, for reimagining and remembering ourselves. In the past, separate space meant downtime, time for recovery and renewal. It was the time to dream resistance, time to theorize, plan, create strategies, and go forward. The time to go forward is still upon us, and we have long surrendered segregated spaces of radical opposition. Our separation now is usually mere escape, a sanctuary for hiding and forgetting. The time to remember is now, the time to speak a counter-hegemonic race talk that is filled with the passion of remembrance and resistance is now. All our words are needed. To move past the pain, to feel the power of change, transformation, revolution, we have to speak now. Acknowledge our pain now. Claim each other and our voices now.
I have that part highlighted. And while I can't relate on a racial aspect, that is also pretty much the same thing to an extent that women deal with men. And so I can see how she has to, sorry, I'm cold. She has to separate her feelings of being invaded by white people's presence in that kind of way when they're overbearing or whatever. And especially in the times of slavery or segregation, when it was worse. It's sort of why I named the Femtifa chat, the men are talking, because there are spaces that there are certain people that cannot speak. They go away to refresh. And I just could kind of resonate with that, even though it wasn't exact.
Right. It's one of those points of intersectionality that you can understand in a different context, just of that division of male and female spaces,
Yeah.
Mm.
But we are almost done with the introduction.
Okay.
And if you want me to pause anytime, also let me know. I feel like I could read better than this lady. It's just that I don't want to. She keeps I don't know. It's like she keeps trying to predict what's being said instead of just fucking reading it. And so I'm just like, this is weird.
Okay.
You can come in here, but do not talk.
That's all
Okay.
right.
Nice.
That's some white man guilt for you. No, I'm kidding. He's fine. He's totally fine.
Reading much of the popular contemporary literature on race and racism written by men in the society, I discovered repeated insistence that racism will never end. The bleak future prophesied in these works stands in sharp contrast to the more hopeful vision offered in progressive feminist writing on the issue of race and racism. This writing is fundamentally optimistic, even as it is courageously and fiercely critical, precisely because it emerges from concrete struggles on the part of diverse groups of women to work together for a common cause, forging a politics of solidarity. The positive revolutionary vision in this work is the outcome of a willingness to examine race and racism from a standpoint that considers the interrelatedness of race, class, and gender. It is not this insightful writing that received the attention of the mainstream mass media. As we search as a nation for constructive ways to challenge racism and white supremacy, it is absolutely essential that progressive female voices gain a hearing. Page 7. The essays in this collection are my speaking. They talk race in myriad ways. Look at it in terms of white supremacy, black and white relations, the interdependency of and coalition politics between people of color. They observe it from a feminist standpoint, talk class and interrelated systems of domination. They critique, challenge, and call for change, sharing the vision of a beloved community where we can affirm race difference without pain, where racism is no more. Covering a span of 20 years, these essays reflect the vision of revolutionary hope that has always been present in the work of politicized feminist writers who think deeply about race relations in our society. A few of the essays are taken from earlier books and included because readers felt that they provoked thought on the issues and were a meaningful catalyst for change. Combined with recent writing on the issue of race, they bear witness to the passion for racial justice that remains a powerful legacy handed down to this generation from freedom fighters of all races who dared to create an anti-racist discourse, who dared to create and sustain an anti-racist social movement. In counter-hegemonic race talk, I testify in this writing. I bear witness to the reality that our many cultures can be remade, that this nation can be transformed, that we can resist racism, and in the act of resistance, recover ourselves and be renewed. End of essay 1. Essay 2, Killing Rage, Militant Resistance.
Sorry. Sorry, I didn't mean to pull that away too close to the end. That was the end. I am dealing with too many things at one time. 1 second. Do you want me to rewind it a little bit and then?
No, that's fine. The only words that didn't come over the audio was and be renewed. So the end of that sentence is that we can resist racism and in the act of resistance recover ourselves and be renewed. And she's right.
Yes. 1 second. I still have that open. I'm going to turn my camera off for a second and then we will come back. It's only going to take me a second. I'm still here.
Okay. I like that this last page here is also kind of giving a shout out there to the Black Panther Party and the White Panther Party, the United Panther Movement that came from all of that too, to unite people of all races in fighting against racism and in turn against colonialism, against capitalism, all of these things that come together and actually, uphold this really fucked system that is oppressive as fuck. And it's a nice shout out she gives there as far as this legacy being handed down from generation to generation of freedom fighters. This is what Fred Hampton was talking about with the Rainbow Coalition of wanting to see come to fruition of people actually coming together and overthrowing this shit.
Sorry.
Hi, John. And I agree with
I'm
you.
like really trying to take care of this because it is making me laugh, but it's awful. So
Right. I'm looking for what Rob said there, and I'm not seeing it.
Racism is a necessary tool to protect the sovereignty of the white race from unnatural mixing.
So saith the troll. Wow, you really
Yeah,
so
I went to a Christian private school, and I sincerely hope that you get hit by a bus.
There's nothing sovereign about being white. Let's break this down here because
this is perfect.
There is no white
it's perfect,
race.
but it's also awful. Oh my god! I know George Rockwell.
Like you can be French, you can be English, you can.
There is an entire reason that I'm here. I saw this.
White is a generality.
I'm not even reading him anymore because I need my train of thought. But so I saw him saying that this is what they want us to do. And that's hilarious to me because I went to a Christian private school that taught me that slavery and the genocide of Native Americans was a cost-benefit analysis because at least they found Jesus Christ. And then on John Oliver the other day, we were watching the premiere and he's specifically talking about this school in Florida and they're reading this book that's called America, Land I Love. And they said that the slave is freer who knows Christ than the free man without him. And this is what those people think. they are absolutely so insecure about themselves and their God and their view of government that they have to constantly subjugate people. And it's fucked up, and he's fucked up, and he can go fuck himself.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm a former Christian private school indoctrinated little hub. So,
like, my goodness, Quint is seriously insecure.
yeah, he doesn't know what imperialism is because he doesn't know how to read a book. But okay, we'll get back to this though. We don't need to roast him all night.
Although that would be fun.
It would be.
It's adorable that he thinks we're
maybe
angry.
He'll show so much spice
He
here.
anger.
And he keeps actually talking about things that are I just think it's funny that he said they're doing we're doing what they want us to do, and he fucking posts Israel flags and we're pro-Palestine, so I don't know why he's even fucking saying that. I'm like, okay, that makes zero sense, but whatever. Do you want to start on the second or on the first chapter?
Sure. Also, I just successfully blocked the troll. So there will be no more white supremacist fucking patriarchal trash coming from Quint. Bye, troll.
Why does Africa today look exactly the same as it did? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe America? maybe motherfucking America? Where do you live?
Apparently, that guy has only seen shit photos from basically white people in America trying to fucking be like, hey, give our charities some money so we can give like 3% of it, actually help people over there. There are parts of Africa that, are amazingly enormous cities that by far surpass anything that we have going on here infrastructure-wise. So,
well, and actually,
maybe he should try,
that gives me a new thought too. That Africa still looks the same because there are resources there, and America is exploiting them specifically. But also, that's why there's all those motherfucking white guys that go over there and shoot all of their fucking animals for fun.
Yeah.
It is the place that rich white people can go to shoot exotic animals, and that is why they're there.
Right. As Parenti said, you don't invade and colonize poor regions of the world. You invade and colonize the wealthiest regions that have the most resources to fucking steal. And if anything, the people in Africa who are still poor because they're being fucking exploited and stolen from by motherfuckers from the United States.
And much worse than we're being exploited and stolen from, because obviously it is not comparable, but we're fucking poor too. There's levels of this exploitation. We just happen to be at the top shit area of it.
Right, because fucking America wants to be the world emperor, fucking steal everybody's fucking resources, colonize everywhere, do it with your military. Oh, it's frustrating because that colonization factor is one of the greatest fucking causes of harm to ever exist on the face of this planet. That right there is completely dependent on racism and sexism in order to continue its fucking stronghold on other parts of the world. It's fucking ridiculous. This shit needs to end. We need to decolonize across the planet.
Yeah. Well, and that will help everybody. And that's what white people like Quint don't realize. And that's not why people should be involved in it, because it takes a lot more fucking work than that. And we may likely never see it. But this isn't just, I mean, every single social civil rights issue started because Black people started it in America specifically. So, and it's helped everybody. Like with the Black Panthers, it's helped everybody. And
Right.
it's not fucking white people that are doing it. So that's not white guilt. That's just fact.
Right. And the fact of the matter, and this is not white guilt either, this is just facts. The fact of the matter is racism is not a fucking burden that the Black community or the Hispanic community or any other people of color community needs to fucking bear on their shoulders. White supremacy and racism are a white people problem. So it's up to white people to call out other fucking white people like, hey, would you quit being racist, bigoted white trash? Yeah. Like, it's...
Well, and because at the same time, racism is being used as a scapegoat for problems that are like, racist people will attribute these problems to people that are not white. But what they don't realize is that they're not solving their problem, and they're also being hateful in the process. So racism itself is just a distraction. People like this that troll us are saying that we're doing what they want us to do and that we have white guilt. But when the reality is that we see the problem clearer than they do, and that we're closer to fucking solving it. And I mean, because they're not, I mean, all they do is hate on everything all the time and wish that everybody would shut their mouths because they're fucking fascists.
That right there.
No, they want control, and he wants control, and that's the only reason that he was fucking here.
Right, which is
it must be really frustrating to constantly seek control in situations where you have none. Maybe he should start to read a little bit more.
It's seriously airing his fucking insecurities there.
Well, and it was like he was saying them before the audio was like calling them out, and I was just like, okay, cool, awesome.
Right.
Thank you.
Right. It's fucking beautiful. It's like he knew what was coming in the text that was gonna directly fucking counter his ass. Like, here, let's slap that bullshit down and slap this bullshit down here. The poor dude just got slapped 50 fucking ways from Sunday, and I'm here for it.
That was awesome. Okay. I thank him for joining us.
Right. Thank you, Quint. We enjoy trolls.
At first I thought it was Quinn, and I was like, oh, Quinn's here. And then I was like, oh, that's not Quinn.
Right, not Quinn at all.
Nope. Yeah, that was really bad. Okay, I'm going to start on chapter 1.
Okay.
Okay, and if you want to stop after chapter 1, just let me know. I don't know how you feel about it. I don't care how slow we go on this.
All right, no worries. Go for it.
Also, if you need me to stop, tell me, because I did not highlight a whole lot here, and I feel like you might be able to relate more than me.
Okay. Yeah, if need be, I'll just pop a note up there on the chat, like, hey, pause here.
Sweet.
Page 8. I am writing this essay sitting beside an anonymous white male that I long to murder. We have just been involved in an incident on an airplane where Kay, my friend and traveling companion, has been called to the front of the plane and publicly attacked by white female stewardesses who accuse her of trying to occupy a seat in first class that is not assigned to her. Although she had been assigned the seat, she was not given the appropriate boarding pass. When she tries to explain, they ignore her. They keep explaining to her in loud voices as though she is a child, as though she is a foreigner who does not speak airline English, that she must take another seat. They do not want to know that the airline has made a mistake. They want only to ensure that the white male who has the appropriate boarding card will have a seat in first class. Realizing our powerlessness to alter the moment, we take our seats. Kay moves to coach, and I take my seat next to the anonymous white male, who quickly apologizes to Kay as she moves her bag from the seat he has comfortably settled in. I stare him down with rage, tell him that I do not want to hear his liberal apologies, his repeated insistence that it was not his fault. Page 9. I am shouting at him that it is not a question of blame, that the mistake was understandable, but that the way Kay was treated was completely unacceptable, that it reflected both racism and sexism. He let me know in no uncertain terms that he felt his apology was enough, that I should leave him be to sit back and enjoy his flight. In no uncertain terms, I let him know that he had an opportunity not to be complicit with the racism and sexism that is so all-pervasive in the society, that he knew no white man would have been called on the loudspeaker to come to the front of the plane while another white man took his seat, a fact he never disputed. Yelling at him, I said, "It was not a question of your giving up the seat. It was an occasion for you to intervene in the harassment of a black woman, and you chose your own comfort and tried to deflect away from your complicity in that choice by offering an insincere, face-saving apology." From the moment Kay and I had hailed a cab on the New York City street that afternoon, we were confronting racism. The cabbie wanted us to leave his taxi and take another. He did not want to drive to the airport. When I said that I would willingly leave but also report him, he agreed to take us. Kay suggested we just get another cab. We faced similar hostility when we stood in the first-class line at the airport. Ready with our coupon upgrades, we were greeted by two young white airline employees who continued their personal conversation and acted as though it were a great interruption to serve us. When I tried to explain that we had upgrade coupons, I was told by the white male that, quote, he was not talking to me, end quote. It was not clear why they were so hostile. When I suggested to Kay that I never see white males receiving such treatment in the first-class line, the white female insisted that race had nothing to do with it, that she was just trying to serve us as quickly as possible. Page 10. I noted that as a line of white men stood behind us, they were indeed eager to complete our transaction, even if it meant showing no courtesy. Even when I requested to speak with a supervisor, shutting down that inner voice which urged me not to make a fuss, not to complain, and possibly make life more difficult for the other black folks who would have to seek services from these two, the white attendants discussed together whether they would honor that request. Finally, the white male called the supervisor. He listened, apologized, stood quietly as the white female gave us the appropriate service. When she handed me the tickets, I took a cursory look at them to see if all was in order. Everything seemed fine. Yet she looked at me with a gleam of hatred in her eye that startled, it was so intense. After we reached our gate, I shared with Kay that I should look at the tickets again because I kept seeing that gleam of hatred. Indeed, they'd not been done properly. I went back to the counter and asked the helpful black skycap to find the supervisor. Even though he was black, I did not suggest that we had been the victims of racial harassment. I asked him instead if he could think of any reason why these two young white folks were so hostile. Though I have always been concerned about class elitism and hesitate to make complaints about individuals who work long hours and often unrewarding jobs that require them to serve the public, I felt our complaint was justified. It was a case of racial harassment, and I was compelled to complain because I feel that the vast majority of black folks who are subjected daily to forms of racial harassment have accepted this as one of the social conditions of our life in white supremacist patriarchy that we cannot change. Page 11. This acceptance is a form of complicity. I left the counter feeling better, not feeling that I had possibly made it worse for the black folks who might come after me, but that maybe these young white folks would have to rethink their behaviors if enough folks complained. We were reminded of this incident when we boarded the plane and the black woman passenger arrived to take her seat in coach, only the white man sitting there refused to move. He did not have the correct boarding pass. She did. Yet he was not called to the front. No one compelled him to move, as was done a few minutes later with my friend Kay. The very embarrassed black woman passenger kept repeating in a soft voice, "I'm willing to sit anywhere." She sat elsewhere.
I don't really have words. I'm trying to find them.
Right. Like, keep in mind, this happened in the 90s.
No, I know, and it's I don't have a problem. I mean, like, there's so much involved with people's schemas that they don't even realize that they're there. And when you describe something like this, people always think that you're crazy no matter what the context is. But it's like you're crazy because you're observing things.
Right. Things that would be enough to drive you crazy. Like, wait, what? Did that really just fucking happen?
Yeah, well, and like whether it's politics or religion or racism or sexism, like I've had this problem too where I just completely overthink things. And usually it turns out to be correct in the way that it is happening because I'm paying attention and no one else is paying attention. But then you'll have a friend or a family member just be like, so do you think that is because that you really saw that, or do you think that you're just like making that up? Which is not meant to necessarily be condescending, but kind of it totally fucking is. And it makes me wonder how to be able to convey that experience without people needing to just be like, and it's like, maybe it's because that's not conscious in the other person. And I'm like, well, that's very apparent to me. I mean, most people are not walking around like Quint over here saying dumb shit out loud. And most of them are completely not even aware of what is going on.
Well, most of them don't care to be aware. The ones who ignore shit like that, they're typically too focused on their own shit to bother to pay attention and see that, oh, this person is actually being prejudiced against another, and maybe I should say something, do something. And then there also comes in the fucking apathy that even if one does notice, you know, oftentimes they won't do shit anyway because they have been ingrained with that fucking shit of like, oh, mind your own business. And it's like, yeah, certain areas people need to learn how to mind their business more. But when it comes to something like that, you don't just stand by and watch somebody get racially profiled and have to deal with fucking prejudiced bullshit like this and not go, what the fuck, to the employees that are doing it. That's what I don't get, is how somebody can be a bystander and either actively ignore it or, you know, walk away just like, oh, not my problem, not affecting me. And it's like, no.
Yeah.
This is part of the problem where I'm going to refer back to what I said a few minutes ago about addressing racism being a white people's problem. Because in that moment, the white people around them should have been like, excuse me, and called out those fucking employees like, this is not okay for you to fucking treat them like this. It's not all right. Like, these two women clearly have their fucking first class boarding passes and you're being dicks to them simply because of their pigment level, and fuck you for that. If anything, everybody who was in earshot should have been stopping those fucking employees going, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Well, and to me, as like, I'm a bartender, so I have multiple ways in which I can de-escalate a situation. I mean, even if you didn't necessarily want to have a whole long drawn out argument, you could offer your own seat and take yourself to coach or something to see something like that. I mean, and I feel like it would have happened racially anyway, the way that she's describing, but I feel like it also added to that level that she was a woman and that most likely women are not going to say anything to you. They want, like she said that she could take another seat. And that, I mean, not that I as a white woman would have been treated that way, because I don't think that I would have been, but it just adds to her level of subservience that she is a woman, because I would do the same thing. I'd be like, no, it's cool, it's fine, because that's just what women do. No, it's cool, it's fine.
Which brings in the sexist fucking shit that intersects right here, because for so many generations, women have been told that they need to be docile and, you know, oh, it's okay, whatever the fuckery may be. Oh, it's okay. I'll just, you know, concede my point. You know, no, she shouldn't have given up her fucking seat. He shouldn't have insisted on keeping it if it's clearly not the seat number on his fucking ticket. So.
Oh, no, I think it's saying that both tickets were the same. So he just thought that it was not his fault because both of their tickets said the same thing.
It's ridiculous.
That's still just the way that people handle it socially, even. He thinks
Right.
that because he wasn't technically wrong, that he was not wrong, or that he could not have done more to at least de-escalate the situation. But men are really not very capable of that usually.
Well, I just scrolled back up to see because she did note here that in that example where the woman was saying, I'm willing to sit anywhere, the man did not have the correct boarding pass, and she did.
Wait, okay.
And no one told him to move like they did to her friend Kay. That's part of why she was bringing that example up, is comparison of within a matter of minutes of each other. A white man who did not have the correct boarding pass was not compelled to move, but her friend Kay was.
I guess I read it wrong. Hang on.
Second paragraph, page 11.
Oh, okay. Page 11. Okay.
Yep. And I see Nathan is in the waiting room here. I'll go ahead and pop him in. There we go. Hi, Nathan. Welcome. I've got jokes playing in my head about, let's get some more white male perspective on the issue. Bad jokes. But here you are. At least you are a white man who has ethics and is anti-racist and anti-bigotry. So,
why, thank you.
You're welcome.
I would hope so anyway.
Yes. What do you think so far? Have you been listening long?
I have not, no. What's going on?
We are reading Killing Rage, Ending Racism by Bell Hooks. And we're only a few pages into the first chapter here. She's describing an instance of racism on an airplane, where she and her friend were treated with downright fucking bigotry.
I don't know why I misread that or heard it. That's weird.
I don't know, but that parallel there of like within a few minutes, a white man who did not have the correct boarding pass wasn't made to move for the black woman who actually held the correct boarding pass for that seat. But a few minutes later, her friend Kay, who the previous staff had, it sounds like, intentionally fucked up her boarding pass.
Yeah. I gathered that, and so that was why I
was just catching
but
Nate up.
It's been like a week and a half since I read it because we were supposed to do it last week, so I just lost the. Yeah.
Right. No, I was just catching Nate up because he said he hadn't heard what was going on. So that's where we're at, is she's comparing these two incidents that happened within a few minutes of each other, of, like nobody forced that guy to move and give the seat to the woman who had the ticket for it. But since they intentionally fucked up her friend's boarding pass, then they made her friend leave. They called her out over the loudspeaker and everything like she was a fucking kid. Like, hey, excuse me, you need to evacuate that seat for a white man to sit down.
Wow.
Yeah. And this happened 25 years ago. This was mid-90s when this happened. And she immediately, you'll see in a moment, and she sat down and started writing this essay on that airplane. Mm-hmm. Because she was rightfully fucking enraged at
absolutely
all of this. It's fucking insane.
Yeah, that's pretty wild, especially considering that, we're supposed to have been over all of that stuff by the 90s. It's 40 years after everything was supposedly better.
Right. At least that's the way American exceptionalism tries to pitch the idea. Like, civil rights.
Ignore it, it'll go away, except it won't.
Right.
But as you can see from the comments for our fucking racist ass troll that was here a few minutes ago, it's not the case. Sadly, racism is still alive and well, regardless of what's changed in legislation.
Let me know when you want me to start again.
Whenever. Go for it.
Okay.
It was these sequences of racialized incidents involving black women that intensified my rage against the white man sitting next to me. I felt a killing rage. I wanted to stab him softly, to shoot him with the gun I wished I had in my purse. And as I watched his pain, I would say to him tenderly, racism hurts. With no outlet, my rage turned to overwhelming grief, and I began to weep, covering my face with my hands. All around me, everyone acted as though they could not see me, as though I were invisible, with one exception. The white man sitting next to me watched suspiciously whenever I reached for my purse. As though I were the black nightmare that haunted his dreams, he seemed to be waiting for me to strike, to be the fulfillment of his racist imagination. I leaned toward him with my legal pad and made sure he saw the title written in bold print, Killing Rage. In the course on black women novelists that I have been teaching this semester at City University, we have focused again and again on the question of black rage. We began the semester reading Harriet Jacobs' autobiography, Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl, asking ourselves, where is the rage? Page 12. In the graduate seminar at Morrison, we pondered whether black folks and white folks can ever be subjects together if white people remain unable to hear black rage, if it is the sound of that rage which must always remain repressed, contained, trapped in the realm of the unspeakable. In Morrison's first novel, The Bluest Eye, her narrator says of the dehumanized, colonized little black girl Pecola that there would be hope for her only if she could express her rage, telling readers, quote, anger is better, there is a presence in anger, end quote. Perhaps then it is that presence, the assertion of subjectivity colonizers do not want to see, that surfaces when the colonized express rage. In these times, most folks associate black rage with the underclass, with desperate and despairing black youth who in their hopelessness feel no need to silence unwanted passions. Those of us black folks who have made it have, for the most part, become skilled at repressing our rage. We do what Anne Petrie's heroine tells us we must in that prophetic 40s novel about black female rage, The Street. It is Moody Johnson who exposes the rage underneath the calm persona. She declares, every day we are choking down that rage. In the 90s, it is not just white folks who let black folks know they do not want to hear our rage. It is also the voices of cautious upper-class black academic gatekeepers who assure us that our rage has no place. Even though black psychiatrists William Greer and Price Cobbs could write an entire book called Black Rage, they used their Freudian standpoint to convince readers that rage was merely a sign of powerlessness. They named it pathological, explained it away. They did not urge the larger culture to see black rage as something other than sickness, to see it as a potentially healthy, potentially healing response to oppression and exploitation. Page 13. In his most recent collection of essays, Race Matters, Cornel West includes the chapter Malcolm X and Black Rage, where he makes rage synonymous with great love for black people. West acknowledges that Malcolm X, quote, articulated black rage in a manner unprecedented in American history, end quote. Yet he does not link that rage to a passion for justice that may not emerge from the context of great love. By collapsing Malcolm's rage and his love, West attempts to explain that rage away, to temper it. Overall, contemporary reassessments of Malcolm X's political career tend to deflect away from killing rage. Yet it seems that Malcolm X's passionate ethical commitment to justice served as a catalyst for his rage. That rage was not altered by shifts in his thinking about white folks, racial integration, etc. It is the clear, defiant articulation of that rage that continues to set Malcolm X apart from contemporary black thinkers and leaders who feel that rage has no place in anti-racist struggle. These leaders are often more concerned about their dialogues with white folks. Their repression of rage, if and when they feel it, and their silencing of the rage of other black people are the sacrificial offering they make to gain the ear of white listeners. Indeed, black folks who do not feel rage at racial injustice because their own lives are comfortable may feel as fearful of black rage as their white counterparts. Today, degrees and intensities of black rage seem to be overdetermined by the politics of location, by class privilege. I grew up in the apartheid South.
First of all, I got so excited when she started to talk about Malcolm X specifically.
Same.
But this thing with rage specifically, I had gotten into the concept of I don't know what the word is for it. I forgot what it is. It's justified rage. It is actually very scary to people, and it changes your entire life. And it can be really a burden upon you also, in the way that you have to find other ways to work around it. And I only mean that to say because you get mad at injustice specifically, and that you don't really act out on that rage in a typical way. You simply remove yourself from the situation, which a lot of people don't do anymore. And so when they talk about rage from a sense of powerlessness, it's because they want you to think that it is powerless, when in reality, you're more likely to remove yourself from that situation. You're more likely to get assassinated, like Malcolm X did. And so it's not really a powerlessness when someone wants to kill you over it, it's fear. But yeah, she's sort of on the I think it's on the Beyond Black Rage one that's coming up next. Oh no. Yeah, I think it is. She gets more into Black Rage being determined by politics of location and class privilege.
Right.
So yeah, I'm excited for that one because it did get pretty interesting and fucked up. So
yeah, it really brings the whole picture together when you throw in the class analysis too. And it kind of makes me wish I'd been able to mute the troll earlier without completely blocking him, so that he would have to shut the fuck up but could still listen, because this right here is precisely what racist fucks like that troll need to hear.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I'm trying to see. I have to go to the bathroom eventually.
Same. So if you want to just let it play for a bit.
Okay. Yeah, because I don't really have anything highlighted. So when I come back, just tell me if you want me to stop.
Okay.
But I'll leave the phone here.
We learned when we were very little that Black people could die from feeling rage and expressing it to the wrong white folks. We learned to choke down our rage. This process of repression was aided by the existence of our separate neighborhoods. In all Black schools, churches, juke joints, etc., we granted ourselves the luxury of forgetfulness. Page 14. Within the comfort of those Black spaces, we did not constantly think about white supremacy and its impact on our social status. We lived a large part of our lives not thinking about white folks. We lived in denial. And in living that way, we were able to mute our rage. If Black folks did strange, weird, or even brutally cruel acts now and then in our neighborhoods, cut someone to pieces over a card game, shoot somebody looking at them the wrong way, we did not link this event to the myriad abuses and humiliations Black folks suffered daily when we crossed the tracks and did what we had to with and for whites to make a living. To express rage in that context was suicidal. Every Black person knew it. Rage was reserved for life at home, for one another. To perpetuate and maintain white supremacy, white folks have colonized Black Americans, and a part of that colonizing process has been teaching us to repress our rage, to never make them the targets of any anger we feel about racism. Most Black people internalize this message well, and though many of us were taught that the repression of our rage was necessary to stay alive in the days before racial integration, we now know that one can be exiled forever from the promise of economic well-being if that rage is not permanently silenced. Lecturing on race and racism all around this country, I am always amazed when I hear white folks speak about their fear of Black people, of being the victims of Black violence. They may never have spoken to a Black person, and certainly never have been hurt by a Black person, but they are convinced that their response to Blackness must first and foremost be fear and dread. They too live in denial. They claim to fear that black people will hurt them, even though there's no evidence which suggests that black people routinely hurt white people in this or any other culture. Despite the fact that many reported crimes are committed by black offenders, this does not happen so frequently as to suggest that all white people must fear any black person. Page 15. Now, black people are routinely assaulted and harassed by white people in white supremacist culture. This violence is by the state.
Yes.
It is necessary for the maintenance of racial difference. Indeed, if black people had...
I would just like to take a moment to hail back to the beginning of the previous page, where she describes the difference between ability to express that rage when at home in a black neighborhood versus being able to express that rage when at work or other, parts of society where they are having to deal with white people, and that rage, with only being able to fucking express it without immediate backlash that could mean death, that meant all of that rage was confined to basically at home in your own neighborhood. And these racist pieces of shit like the troll that we had earlier, he probably at this point would be talking shit about, black on black crime, see? And it's like, do you not see how your racism is a direct fucking cause of that? That right there, this paragraph completely blows any fucking black on black crime argument from racist motherfuckers. Blows those arguments right out of the fucking water. Because when you look at what the causal factor is there, of the only safe space to even fucking, let that rage out, and even then not necessarily safe, because, she's even pointing out, cutting somebody for looking at him, or shooting somebody for looking at him the wrong way, cut someone to pieces over a card game, things like that, where that rage ends up coming out on members of the community instead of on the racist white people treating them like trash every fucking day, who would have had it coming, but it would have resulted in an immediate fucking lynching. This is one of the things that grabbed me by the fucking gut when I started reading this, and I stopped right fucking there. That's when I messaged you, like, okay, we need to do a book series or book club series on this, because there's things that she is lending context to that I've never even seen brought into the debates on, this whole fucking false stigma and pretense of black on black crime being brought up by racist white motherfuckers. You never see that simple causal factor of the fucking white supremacy shit itself being what's feeding that.
Agreed. No, and some of these things I was reading them and I can comprehend, but it's hard for me to reply with anything, which honestly I don't always think that I should either. So
fair.
I mean, not that we shouldn't have the conversation, but there's just certain things that it's overwhelming to hear about it. It's uncomfortable.
As it should be.
Yeah.
I mean, not necessarily for you personally, because
no, and yeah, I know. And it's only uncomfortable for me personally because it's like, I don't know, you feel like you should say something, but sometimes there isn't always something to say.
Right. I just, when I read that paragraph and that fucking struck me, I knew that regardless of how comfortable or uncomfortable it really is to talk about it, it's something that definitely needs to be talked about, because you know, there's always the responses from leftists pointing out, well, here, look at white on white crime rates, but you never see that fucking talked about in media as being a white on white crime, motherfucker. That it comes down to those sociological factors of there's just simply more likely to be crime amongst people who live in the same area because that's who you're in closest proximity to. You know, but this, like I said, it fucking punched me. Like, goddamn, because you never fucking see people point out flat out that white supremacy is a driving factor there, because, you know, if somebody actually voices this very valid rage in, say, a white neighborhood or a fucking white business sector or something, they're at minimum in this day and age going to get the cops called on them for like a mental health check, which is more than likely going to be a death sentence.
Well, and it's just ridiculous to me that we've conditioned people to believe that rage is a bad thing, unless there are people that are allowed to have more rage than others, but generally speaking, people act like if you're angry, that you're irrational.
Right. Like, you must need to calm down. No fucking consideration of, is this valid anger and legitimate? And
well, and this is how fascism starts too. It doesn't start with outright immediate slavery or outright immediate fucked up laws or outright immediate injustices. It starts with people thinking that you should just probably calm down.
yeah. And it's all fucked up. It's all fucked up.
I'm going to lose my mind.
Why? What's up?
It's personal. I'll tell you later.
Okay.
Someone said I didn't expect it to go this long, and I'm like, I want a hot dog. I also can't eat a hot dog on camera while a troll's telling me to take a Midol, because there's just gonna be a wiener in my mouth. And so I'm just like, I didn't expect it to take this long. I'm like, all of the streams take this long. This is what the stream is.
We've only been going for an hour and 13 minutes. So,
yeah, really, it's not. Yeah. I don't know what page we're on either, but
15.
I think we should probably stop at the end of this one.
We can do that.
Yeah.
By the time we're done getting through, you know, discussion and stuff along the way too, it'll probably put us right at about 2 hours.
Yeah. So yeah, this might take us the whole year.
Yeah.
If it's 23, or no, that's like half the year.
Hey, whatever, however long it takes
I'm
to
down
get
with it, but yeah. All right, I'll start it again.
Sorry, I had to pop that up there.
No, wait, huh? Oh,
look at this comment. Yeah.
Eat the hot dog. Eat
Honestly, I think that would have been kind of funny to be like, this is what I think of the fucking patriarchy. Chomp on a hot dog. I mean, that would have been great to hit the troll with, but it's a little late.
He can't even make a hot dog when I ask at 6, which was at 6. I'm sorry. I'm not. This is why I said it was personal. I'm not trying to roast him. I'm gonna push play again.
Okay.
He doesn't know how to just put a hot dog on a bun and bring it in here. So I'll be right back.
Okay.
Not learned our place as second-class citizens through educational institutions. We learn it by the daily assaults perpetuated by white offenders on our bodies and beings that we feel but rarely publicly protest or name. Though we do not live in the same fierce conditions of racial apartheid that only recently ceased being our collective social reality, Most black folks believe that if they do not conform to white-determined standards of acceptable behavior, they will not survive. We live in a society where we hear about white folks killing black people to express their rage. We can identify specific incidents throughout our history in this country, whether it be Emmett Till, Bensonhurst, Howard Beach, etc. We can identify rare incidents where individual black folks have randomly responded to their fear of white assault by killing. White rage is acceptable, can be both expressed and condoned, but black rage has no place and everyone knows it.
Therein lies the problem.
Apartheid South, to attend a predominantly white institution of higher education, I was not in touch with my rage. I had been raised to dream only of racial uplift, of a day when white and black would live together as one. I had been raised to turn the other cheek. However, the fresh air of white liberalism encountered when I went to the West Coast to attend college in the early 70s invited me to let go of some of the terror and mistrust of white people that living in apartheid had bred in me. That terror keeps all rage at bay. I remember my first feelings of political rage against racism. They surfaced within me after I had read Fanon, Memi, Freire. They came as I was reading Malcolm X's autobiography. As Cornel West suggests in his essay, I felt that Malcolm X dared black folks to claim our emotional subjectivity and that we could do this only by claiming our rage. Page 3. Like all profound repression, my rage unleashed made me afraid. It forced me to turn my back on forgetfulness, called me out of my denial. It changed my relationship with home, with the South, made it so I could not return there. Inwardly, I felt as though I were a marked woman. A black person unashamed of her rage, using it as a catalyst to develop critical consciousness.
Sorry, I'm chewing. This part, I don't know where it's at. I feel like I must have.
Top of page 16.
Okay, I feel like I must have highlighted that. I related with that personally also because I'm not doing well. Yeah, I'm just not going to do it on camera, James.
Goodness.
No, so I related to it because I know what she means when she says that she feels like a marked woman, mentally speaking. And that she can't go back home to her family because I have issues with my family also, and some of it is due to racism. And the rest of it is just due to their concept of things, that they have no awareness of class and they have no awareness of sex, and they believe that things should be the way that our troll said that they should be. And so it's a really hard place to be in because with a lot of people that can lead to addiction and it can lead to making poor relationship decisions. And it's a really bizarre feeling to feel like you've been completely separated mentally from something else that you can never go back. And especially speaking obviously she's a black woman, her family is black, and she feels like she can't even relate to her own family still.
Right? Like feeling like she wouldn't be able to even comfortably express that rage with them because of their sheer denial of the existence of this racist paradigm for her entire upbringing. It's gotta be really, really fucked to feel on that fucking level, to even try to conceptualize of it, just no. I can understand it on other levels too because of issues where I disagree with my family when it comes to things like religion and whatnot. But that's religion is a choice. The shade of your pigment's not, So to not even be able to express these things that she has had awaken in her comfortably without, being outcast. It's a holy shit thing, because at least even on the religious tip, I can have those conversations with my family. I can call them out for where certain ideals that they were taught are bullshit.
Yeah, and from what I gathered, I think that she did remain a Christian. I could be wrong, but I remember I've read The Will to Change also by her.
Yeah.
And she really didn't say anything bad about Christianity. It sounded like she still was one. It's been like 5 years since I read that, but it did explain what her home life was like. I can't remember specifically. But I do remember vaguely that her father was not a very loving person. I don't remember if he was physically abusive or not, or if he was just angry. But it is what she's talking about, how that anger turns inward rather than is taken out on the people that it deserves to be taken out on.
Part of
I'll start
that
again.
psychological torture. Asshole brain, torturing oneself. And to internalize something rather than express it is another facet of sexism that has given so many of us asshole brain when it comes to that shit of like, hey, wait, you're not a man. You shouldn't be talking right now, especially not about this. You're not entitled to feel that way.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, the fuck we are, you know? And that's just fucking one facet of it. Just total
Do you want to go again?
Yeah.
Come to fully decolonize self-actualization had no real place in the existing social structure. I felt like an exile. Friends and professors wondered what had come over me. They shared their fear that this new militancy might consume me. When I journeyed home to see my family, I felt estranged from them. They were suspicious of the new me. The good, white, Southern white folks who had always given me a helping hand began to worry that college was ruining me. I seemed alone in understanding that I was undergoing a process of radical politicization and self-recovery. Confronting my rage, witnessing the way it moved me to grow and change, I understood intimately that it had the potential not only to destroy, but also to construct. Then and now, I understand rage to be a necessary aspect of resistance struggle. Rage can act as a catalyst, inspiring courageous action. By demanding that Black people repress and annihilate our rage to assimilate, to reap the benefits of material privilege in white supremacist, capitalist, patriarchal culture, white folks urge us to remain complicit with their efforts to colonize, oppress, and exploit. Those of us Black people who have the opportunity to further our economic status willingly surrender our rage. Many of us have no rage. As individual Black people increase their class power, live in comfort, with money mediating the viciousness of racial assault, we can come to see both the society and white people differently. Page 17. We experience the world as infinitely less hostile to Blackness than it actually is. This shift happens particularly as we buy into liberal individualism and see our individual fate as Black people in no way linked to the collective fate. It is that link that sustains full awareness of the daily impact of racism on Black people, particularly its hostile and brutal assaults.
I had that part highlighted. We experience the world as infinitely less hostile to Blackness than it actually is. This shift happens particularly as we buy into liberal individualism and see our individual fate as Black people in no way linked to the collective fate. It is that link that sustains full awareness of the daily impact of racism on Black people, particularly its hostile and brutal assaults. Do you have any thoughts?
Just observing the disconnect there, where she says, The shift happens particularly as we buy into liberal individualism and see our individual fate as Black people in no way linked to the collective fate.
She's basically pointing out that Black people have started all revolutions, and that while it should not be their responsibility to free us as well, especially when we as a collective treat them badly, that it is an actual collective fate of the world itself.
Yeah.
That we are killing ourselves because of this thought process.
Mm-hmm.
And I shall start.
Black people who sustain that link often find that as we move on up, our rage intensifies. During that time of my life when racial apartheid forbid possibilities of intimacy and closeness with whites, I was most able to forget about the pain of racism. The intimacy I share with white people now seldom intervenes in the racism and is the cultural setting that provokes rage. Close to white folks, I am forced to witness firsthand their willful ignorance about the impact of race and racism. The harsh absolutism of their denial, their refusal to acknowledge accountability for racist conditions past and present. Those who doubt these perceptions can read a white male documenting their accuracy in Andrew Hacker's work, Two Nations, Black and White, Separate, Hostile, Unequal. His work, like that of the many Black scholars and thinkers whose ideas he draws upon, highlights the anti-Black feelings white people cultivate and maintain in white supremacist capitalist patriarchy. Racial hatred is real, and it is humanizing to be able to resist it with militant rage. Forgetfulness and denial enable masses of privileged Black people to live the good life without ever coming to terms with Black rage. Addictions of all sorts, cutting across class, enable Black folks to forget, take the pain and rage away, replacing it with dangerous apathy and hard-heartedness. Addictions promote passive acceptance of victimization. In recent times, conservative Black thinkers have insisted that many Black folks are wedded to a sense of victimization. That is only a partial truth. To tell the whole truth, they would have to speak about the way mainstream white culture offers the mantle of victimization as a substitute for transformation of society. White promote Black victimization, encourage passivity by rewarding those Black folks who whine, grovel, beg, and obey. Perhaps this is what Toni Morrison's character Joe Trent.
What was that noise?
Just going, yeah, that right there.
I didn't know if that was you or if Nate was still here, and so I was like, "What?" Okay.
Yeah, just me throwing a little that emphasis on that, because, yeah, this
talking about when he shares in jazz the knowledge his playfather Mr. Frank taught him. Quote, the secret of kindness from white people. They had to pity a thing before they could like it. End quote. The presence of Black victimization is welcomed. It comforts many whites precisely because it is the antithesis of activism. Internalization of victimization renders Black folks powerless, unable to assert agency on our behalf. When we embrace victimization, we surrender our rage. My rage intensifies because I am not a victim. It burns in my psyche with an intensity that creates clarity. It is a constructive healing rage. Vietnamese Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh teaches that self-recovery is ultimately about learning to see clearly. The political process of decolonization is also a way for us to learn to see clearly. It is the way to freedom for both colonized and colonizer. The mutuality of a subject-to-subject encounter between those individuals who have decolonized their minds make it possible for Black rage to be heard, to be used constructively. Currently, we are daily bombarded with mass media images of Black rage, usually personified by angry young Black males wreaking havoc upon the innocent, that teach everyone in the culture to see this rage as useless, without meaning, destructive. This one-dimensional misrepresentation of the power of rage helps maintain the status quo. Central militant response to race and racism, it ensures that there will be no revolutionary effort to gather that rage and use it for constructive social change. Page 19. Significantly, contemporary reinterpretations and critiques of Malcolm X seek to redefine him in a manner that strips him of rage as though this were his greatest flaw. Yet his rage for justice, clearly pushed him towards greater and greater awareness. It pushed him to change. He is an example of how we can use rage to empower. It is tragic to see his image recouped to condone mindless anger and violence in Black life. As long as Black rage continues to be represented as always and only evil and destructive, we lack a vision of militancy that is necessary for transformative revolutionary action. I did not kill the white man on the plane, even though I remained awed by the intensity of that desire. I did listen to my rage, allow it to motivate me to take pen in hand and write in the heat of that moment. At the end of the day, as I considered why it had been so full of racial incidents, of racial harassment, I thought that they served as harsh reminders compelling me to take a stand, speak out, choose whether I will be complicit or resist. All our silences in the face of racist assault are acts of complicity. What does our rage at injustice mean if it can be silenced, erased by individual material comfort? If aware Black folks gladly trade in their critical political consciousness for opportunistic personal advancement, then there is no place for rage and no hope that we can ever live to see the end of white supremacy. Rage can be consuming. It must be tempered by an engagement with a full range of emotional responses to Black struggle for self-determination. In midlife, I see in myself that same rage at injustice which surfaced in me more than 20 years ago as I read the autobiography of Malcolm X and experienced the world around me anew. Many of my peers seem to feel no rage or believe it has no place. They see themselves as estranged from the angry black youth. Sharing rage connects those of us who are older and more experienced with younger Black and non-Black folks who are seeking ways to be self-actualized, self-determined, who are eager to participate in anti-racist struggle. Page 20. Renewed, organized Black liberation struggle cannot happen if we remain unable to tap collective Black rage. Progressive Black activists must show how we take that rage and move it beyond fruitless scapegoating of any group, linking it instead to a passion for freedom and justice that illuminates, heals, and makes redemptive struggle possible.
And that is the end of chapter 1.
I have no words. Because there's no way to put any of that any better than she already just did.
Have you gotten to the next chapter?
I have not.
It's we're gonna have a time next week.
Yeah,
because I feel like if we get into this next chapter that we are never gonna shut the fuck up.
I mean, we could do another 3-hour tour. If you're up for it, I'm up for it.
I mean, I'm already eating a hot dog. How long are we?
We are at an hour and a half.
Okay, fuck it. But I think this will take an hour and a half.
Fair. If it does, that's okay by me. How about y'all out there watching in the audience? What do you think? Are you down to dive into chapter 2 right now, or would you rather wait till next week?
I only have 3/4 of my second hot dog left.
My hot dogs are sadly in the freezer, so hot dogs won't be happening.
It's helping me digest the Midol.
Right? Yeah, could I get some Midol? Can you send some this way? Apparently there's...
Well, it won't help you, but yeah, I can send you some.
I know. But as far as elongated meat products go, I think I'm going to go grab some jerky. And
all right, I can finish this hot dog real fast. It's only 9 pages, but I have a lot highlighted. And it gets to be about, I guess, a black shooter in the 90s and the way that all of this is handled. And he is Jamaican. He's not from America, but obviously the white media is going to use that. And it gets to be, there's a lot wrong. Like a lot. So. Get ready. I'll turn my camera off. Or no, you can go and get it, and then I'll shove more hot dog in my mouth.
You can go ahead and hit play if you want, because
Okay.
I'm going to take a minute. I'll just shut my camera off, but I'll still be in earshot. And Wade, I totally understand. You work at the ass crack of dawn. He says he might not be able to stay up for it, but everybody else is saying they're down. So,
Okay. Well, I mean, I don't want to start this with. I'm not kidding.
Well, he said he can come back and listen.
No, I mean, I'm not kidding. Like, I don't want to start this while you're away because I'm not kidding. Like, literally, I'm not kidding.
Okay, I'll be right back. Excuse me.
I already have the beers. I had the beers before. I just don't have a very helpful person to give me the hot dog. Man, I want to scroll through and see all these things that I missed from this motherfucker. That was perfect, man. I don't know if anybody's still talking to me, but...
Okay. Halfway there. Just a moment.
You're fine. I'm still laughing about where this troll went. Death to communists. Communists are scary. They should all die.
Yeah, the troll dude definitely exemplified like
the strength,
right now.
The strength of a society is based around the strength of men to keep women in the home. The family is disintegrating, and it's due to feminist mythology. What god am I worshiping? What mythology? What? This isn't mythology.
I didn't know it was mythical. We mythical creatures. Well, I mean, to be fair, we're goddesses, you know, but.
Oh my fucking god.
Apparently, we are pretend.
Trying to make fun of him, and then I was also like, take a Midol, it's easy to get emotional. Does he think that Midol stops your emotions? He doesn't.
He was saying they're like, okay, women are mythical creatures of some sort, so we're not real. We're not real people.
All our names are Eve.
Oh God.
That's all our names.
He literally proves our point for why men who think like that are trash. Like, I wonder if his mother lets him speak to her with that fucking mouth.
John is hilarious.
I mean, if I was that poor soul, I'd be telling him, motherfucker, I brought you into this world.
Yeah, I'm so jealous of your 60 subscribers. I'm just like, apparently, I mean, you're here.
Right? Like, he had no invitation. I don't even know who the fuck
was. Much happier if you had a man and some children in your life. It's our duty to populate and fill this nation with white children to combat the Marxist invasion.
And that was when I died and lost it.
Well, not that he cares about whether women are wet or dry, but children make me dry up real quick. So,
like, it's one of those things where that's a point of his insecurity there. He's mad that there's women out there like us who just don't fucking have any interest in having kids.
I'm the oldest of 8. I'm the oldest of 8. There is a reason that I don't have children and that I will abort every single one that comes into my body. Luckily, I have not had to do that, but I will. I totally fucking will. There's no fucking way. And honestly, our children aren't going to fucking live long enough to fucking, it doesn't matter. We shouldn't be having children.
It's not an obligation. He seems to think it's an obligation, and I think he's just mad that he hasn't found anybody with a vagina willing to turn his seed into another fucking human being. Because look at how he talks. So I don't fucking know. There's something wrong with him, but That was definitely at least
Malcolm
entertaining.
X was based. He knew separate was best. He obviously has not read anything by Malcolm X because he again does not know how to read. I love how angry you're getting. I wasn't reading most of what he was saying when he was still here.
Right? I would love to know where he got the anger from. Like, laughing at you doesn't denote anger, guy.
Who owned the slave ships? Hint, it wasn't white men.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, all of his comments were fucking trash. Every one of them. That was a whole entire dumpster fire that he just rolled into the comments. And it's like, damn, you're really insecure about so many things, guy.
That was hilarious. Okay. I like how he thought I was mad because I mentioned his comments like 2 times. Like, and I actually burned him both times, so I don't even know. I mean, I was like, all right, I'm drinking a beer. What are you doing? You're fucking masturbating on the other end of your computer. All right. I'll start this next one. Stop bitching about this man. All right.
End of essay 2. Page 21. Essay 3. Beyond Black Rage. Ending Racism. Before Newsweek published its cover story, The Hidden Rage of Successful Blacks, before a disturbed man shot white commuters on a New York train, I wrote an essay about killing rage, about the anger that was surfacing in me in response to racism in this society. In that essay, I emphasized that it is a mark of the way Black Americans cope with white supremacy that there are few reported incidents of Black rage against racism, leading us to target white folks. Shortly after this essay was written, a Black man randomly shot people on a New York train. They were not all white, even though mass media made it appear that it was the case. However, if the motive behind the random killings was depicted as anger and racism, in notes he carried on his person, he expressed anger at, quote, racism by Caucasians and Uncle Tom Negroes, end quote. Even though the gunman carried in his pocket a list containing the names of Black male leaders, the white-dominated mass media turned his pathological expression of anger towards Blacks and whites alike into a rage against white people. Page 22. Despite being psychologically disturbed, the suspect never made racism synonymous with white people. He held accountable all the groups who helped perpetuate and maintain institutionalized racism, including Black folks. That the media chose to reduce his complex understanding of the nature of neocolonial racism to rage against whites set the stage for white folks to further demonize and dehumanize all Black folks while representing themselves as a group that is never carried away by killing rage.
That was why I didn't want to start without you, because it gets into it pretty quick. So the shooter, I don't think she ever really names this shooter. So I don't know exactly what this incident is that she's talking about. And I must have been like 5 or 6 at the time, since this book is 96. But it's interesting to see that he conceptualizes racism as a collective thought process rather than specific to you and me, which is kind of like what she was talking about previously in the last essay, that stepping up into higher classes of things kind of is like trying to take what you can get for yourself while everybody else underneath you as a race is not being treated the same way that you are. And so it only perpetuates people's awareness of that, especially as a Black person that is already watching how white people treat you and then watching how others in your community are sucking up to that. And it gets worse, but I just felt that it was like an immediate segue into the subject that she was talking about.
Indeed. And the end of that last sentence, she's literally just laying it all out as far as that whitewashing that happens of dehumanizing all black folks while representing themselves as a group that is never carried away by killing rage. Excuse me, look at how many fucking examples throughout history are nothing but white people fucking getting carried away by killing rage.
Yeah.
Like right there in Tulsa where you live with the Greenwood Massacre, that was completely white people being carried away.
That was rage at not selling the land to them. Even though they pushed them to live where they were living, they wanted them there at one point, and then when they found out that they just wanted to expand more, then they were mad that they couldn't take that too.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes back again to the troll. I'm scrolling down again.
But that also started with a false accusation from a white girl against a black boy saying that he sexually assaulted her when he had not. And what was the response? To burn the entire fucking town of Greenwood down.
Yeah. Well, they were already trying to get them to sell that land to them.
Mm-hmm.
And they wouldn't. And so then they created that problem. Well, it turns out that she was actually older than they said that she was. And that there was a very big likelihood that they knew each other and that they were friends.
So there's a possibility then there that her family just made that shit up, that she didn't even say herself.
And in that time, it doesn't even necessarily have to be the family, because everything is so racist, more blatantly racist than it is now, that it didn't matter if the family said anything or not. I mean, there's not a lot you can do when an entire white mob goes through and decides that they're going to do something. I forgot. I had something else to say too, but I forgot what it was.
But they literally used that as fuel, though, to get the rest of the white people around town enraged and get them to fly off the fucking handle and help them do that, including, the fucking National Guard. It wasn't even just limited to the racist motherfuckers that lived in town. They brought the National Guard in to help them fucking bomb and burn out Greenwood. Because that's how quickly that fucking fuse gets lit when it comes to shit like this. And still, like she pointed out there's white people who try to pretend like white people never fucking just blindly fly off in a rage and kill people. And it's like, that is the fucking history of this country.
That's our signature move, bro.
Right. Like, that's about as white supremacist as white supremacy gets.
Yeah. I'll start again.
Okay.
Newspaper articles reporting the incident, there was no mention of enraged white folks killing blacks. Indeed, the wife of one of the white victims shared her feeling that lots of whites, quote, hate blacks, but they don't go around shooting them, end quote. Of course, in saying this, she revealed her ignorance of a long, well-documented history of racist aggression towards blacks, where enraged whites have done just that. Contrary to her uninformed assertion, the annals of history document the slaughter of black folks by enraged white Americans. Just days before the train incident, the newspaper USA Today carried a brief statement reporting that Ku Klux Klan informant Henry Alexander, dying of cancer, confessed to his wife that in 1957, he and 3 white male associates abducted a black man, quote, and forced him to jump from a bridge into a river, quote, in Alabama. The man was killed by the fall. Despite all the documented cases of shootings, lynchings, and various slaughters of black folks by hostile white racists, we will never really know the exact numbers. And that is not really even important. It is important that everyone in the United States understand that white supremacy promotes, encourages, and condones all manner of violence against black people. Institutionalized racism allows this violence to remain unseen and or renders it insignificant by suggesting it is justifiable punishment for some offense. Mass media do not see it as newsworthy. Page 23. Yet when a black man carrying notes about racism randomly kills folks on a train, that is deemed newsworthy. Reported everywhere in the world, this incident was used not to highlight white supremacy and its potential maddening impact. It became just another way to stereotype black males as irrational, angry pet predators. White-dominated mass media used this incident to continue a long line of what Toni Morrison, in her editorial On the Backs of Blacks, calls race talk. Quote, the explicit insertion into everyday life of racial signs and symbols that have no meaning other than pressing African Americans to the lowest level of the racial hierarchy, end quote. She reminds us that, quote, popular culture shaped by film, theater, advertising, the press, television, and literature is heavily engaged in race talk. It participates freely in this most enduring and efficient rite of passage into American culture, negative appraisals of the native-born black population, end quote. Even though the black man on the New York train was not native-born, his actions were presented as though they revealed secrets about the nature of all black people in this society. The secrets have to do with what Newsweek magazine had already informed the public about, the hidden rage of successful blacks. Significantly, when white-dominated mass media call attention to that rage, the point is to suggest that it is misguided, misplaced, and inappropriate response, since these are the black people one man told me who have been allowed to make it. He does not hear the racial paternalism in his use of the word allow, or understand that the rage expressed in this article was about the failure of success to mediate and break down racist barriers. That despite their success, the individuals who had made it still encountered racial discrimination.
I had a whole lot highlighted there. So I decided to wait until the end of it, just on this couple pages. It's interesting to me that she says popular culture shaped by film, theater, advertising, the press, television, and literature is heavily engaged in race talk. It participates freely in this most enduring and efficient rite of passage into American culture, negative appraisals of the native-born black population. You can hear racist talk in the way that white supremacists speak constantly if you're paying attention to it. And that's for what I'm saying that is not immediately obvious. They've learned how to word things to make it not sound this way, and it subconsciously still has its effect on you because they're pretending that that's not what they're doing. And now I don't know where she went, and I'm sitting here.
I'm still here.
I know.
Still for a minute. Didn't not fully.
It kind of does this. I mean, it does this constantly with anyone that's not a white male. That everybody's appeals to injustice or are just overreactionary, and it is because they have learned how to change their speech enough for most people to not be able to hear it.
Right.
But that's what I wanted to point out.
A lot of it's become subtle racism that people think they can just, slide some shit by, and it's like, wait a minute, you just did a racism.
Yeah, as long as you can't prove it, then your observations don't matter, because we have been put in a reality and a time where technology is constantly documenting everything, but it doesn't document intentions, because we still cannot figure out what people's intentions are and prove them wholeheartedly, even if we know exactly what they are.
Right.
And I feel like this is a problem, and I feel like that may be the next mental revolution, is to come up with a way to kind of be able to read people's intentions with certainty to an extent. I mean, that sounds kind of creepy at the same time, but
yeah,
certainly it's not helping us now to not be able to pinpoint what people are actually doing and pretending that they're not.
Well,
But
they
I can
think
start.
they can hide certain things in symbolism or just skewed language that, you know, is meant to disguise meanings. And I didn't mean it that way. I meant it another bigoted way. And it's like, God, you're not helping yourself, you know?
Yeah.
But it's one of those things that, you know, yeah, I don't know how to address overcoming that. Well, how do you prove, you know, that that's what this person's intention was there, other than simply laying out the parallels of here is what the fuck that precisely means, what it translates to, and regardless of how you want to try to paint it in a different light, that's what the fuck it is. You know? Like, it's ridiculous that people think they can fucking like get shit by you as if you're not going to catch subtle racism in the things that they're saying. And the ones who are loudest to proclaim, see, I'm not a racist, but here's some racist shit, you know?
Yeah.
It gets old.
Yeah, it does. This is going a little bit faster than I thought it would. But it does still have a lot.
Indeed.
I don't want to give it away though until we get there. All right.
Well, then and hit play.
I haven't said it.
The persistence of racial discrimination was one of the social realities that consistently disturbed the peace of mind of the black man on the train, page 24. Newspapers all around the United States suggested that it was overreactive concern about racism that led to the random killings. Professors at the university where the black suspect had been a student testified that race was an obsession with him. White folks responded to the incident by expressing their weariness of hearing about racism, especially from affluent black folks, or individuals like the man on the train who, though from a privileged background, had not attained desired success. Clearly, he attributed his lack of success to institutionalized racism. Ironically, even though he is a Jamaican immigrant from an upper-class family, class was not perceived as an issue in this incident. Newspaper and magazine articles did not discuss whether there are differences in the wage of successful blacks and that of the underclass. Instead, this incident became an occasion for white-dominated mass media to send a very clear message to all African Americans that there is no place in this society for the speaking of black rage or for acting it out.
So I was waiting for her to say that he was Jamaican. So he is not from America. He's Jamaican, where he's surrounded by people that he is comfortable with that are of his culture. And then he moves to America and is treated with the most absolute disrespect. Like, this is a step down for him, even though technically in America, he's still considered to be a more privileged black person. And so the shock of that is obviously going to be, wow, America fucking sucks.
Right.
And so they're using his reaction to blame this all on other black people, even though he comes from an entirely different culture where, I mean, I don't know the history of Jamaica specifically, but whenever, I mean, I would assume it's better than this as far as respect goes.
Right.
And so it doesn't take into account the like culture shock of that.
Well, no, they wanted to deny the existence of all these other facets, because to look at any of them, I mean, they already should have been looking in the fucking mirror with the racism part being pointed out, but there was no way to avoid looking in the mirror if you're going to acknowledge the other facets.
Yeah, well, and the fact of the matter is that in most cases, a black person that was born in this time, that was born in this country, is somewhat already used to this. Like, they're used to it enough to where they're not going to lash out that way. But obviously, he was not used to this. And obviously, no, he shouldn't have done what he did. He shouldn't shoot random people. That doesn't do anything. That doesn't help anybody. But it makes sense why someone would lose their mind in that kind of a sense and feel trapped if he can't go back.
And bigger picture, nor should any fucking buddy just be used to this.
Yeah.
You know? And that's part of that fucked mental conditioning to these dynamics of like, oh, well, it's just America. This is just the way it is. No, it can change. Fuck this shit. This is unacceptable. You know? Like, it's fucking just dumbfounding that right there wasn't fucking considered by any of them of shit. Maybe there's something we need to fundamentally change in the society that is causing situations like this directly.
Yeah.
But again, that would have required these motherfuckers to look in the fucking mirror and go, oh shit, we created the problem. We need to fix it.
I'll start again.
Okay.
Indeed, this incident became a catalyst for a public discourse wherein black rage could be mocked and trivialized, talked about as though there are no social conditions that should invoke such an extreme, potentially insane response. That public discussion intensified during the time that the white lawyers representing the defendant used black rage as an explanation for this crime. A recent editorial in New York Magazine, Capitalizing on the Killer, by Eric Poley, is an example of this trend. It carried the subtitle, A Spurious Black Rage Defense. Poley asserts, quote, over and over in the past decade, activists have used black rage as a largely unspoken justification for all kinds of despicable behavior. The outrageous lies of Al Sharpton during the Tawana Brawley caper, the gang rape by teenagers in the Central Park jogger case, the black boycott of a Korean grocery, the reign of terror in Crown Heights, ellipsis. The black rage theory insults African Americans because it allows any behavior by blacks to be excused, even celebrated, as a response to oppression, end quote, page 25. One wonders how it can be that Pooley knows that black folks attempt to justify corruption on the basis of black rage, if until recently it was never overtly cited as the reason for aberrant behavior. Pooley can accept black anger, but he is unable to make a distinction between the rage many black people feel and the way mainstream mass media represent that rage, or the black response to it. He does not tell readers how the vast majority of black folks responded to the shooting on the train. Most black folks felt that the assailant was psychologically crazy, even though they also added that the conditions of racism can drive one mad. Unlike mass media, most black folks can recognize that it is ethically and morally wrong to kill folks, even as we can also sympathize with mental illness that is either engendered or exacerbated by life in white supremacist capitalist patriarchy. A complex understanding of black rage will not emerge with this case, since as spectacle, it is already being designed to invalidate the reality of black response to racism. That invalidation is happening both by racist whites who want to see the suspect murdered by the state, and the liberal white lawyers Kunstler and Kuby, who began by launching a defense of blaming white racism for black rage. They insist, quote, we are not saying he's justified. We're not saying that people should name their children after him or follow in his footsteps. We're just saying that he was not responsible for his own conduct. We're saying white racism is to blame, end quote. Already, a carnivalesque aura surrounds public debate about black rage. Overall, that atmosphere undermines the possibility that there will be any serious understanding of the way in which living in a white supremacist context, suffering racist discrimination and or exploitation and oppression, can create and or exacerbate mental illness, page 26. But by deploying a defense that seeks to pathologize black rage as though all rage is inherently pathological, Kunstler and Kuby invalidate the idea that rage against racism does not signal insanity or pathology. By concocting a defense that relies on biased, Eurocentric, one-dimensional explanations for black rage, they perpetuate racist stereotypes.
Damn.
Many African Americans feel uncontrollable rage when we encounter white supremacist aggression. That rage is not pathological. It is an appropriate response to injustice. However, if not processed constructively, it can lead to pathological behavior. But so can any rage, irrespective of the cause it serves as a catalyst. In my own case, the anger I felt about white supremacy that surfaced so intensely as to be murderous shocked me. I have never felt such uncontrollable, killing rage. Had I killed the white man whose behavior evoked that rage, I feel that it would not have been caused by white racism, but by the madness engendered by a pathological context. Until this culture can acknowledge the pathology of white supremacy, we will never create a cultural context wherein the madness of white racist hatred of blacks or the uncontrollable rage that surfaces as a response to that madness can be investigated, critically studied, and understood. Denying that rage is at times a useful and constructive response to exploitation, oppression, and continued injustice, but it creates a cultural climate where the psychological impact of racism can be ignored, and where race and racism become topics that are depoliticized. Racism can then be represented as an issue for blacks only, a mere figment of our perverse paranoid imaginations, while all whites continue to be brainwashed to deny the existence of an institutionalized racist structure that they work to perpetuate and maintain. Page 27. Rage about racism in the society intensifies among blacks and our allies in struggle as white denial reaches epidemic pathological proportions. The danger of that denial cannot be understood, nor the rage it evokes, as long as the public refuses to acknowledge that this is a white supremacist culture and that white supremacy is rooted in pathological responses to difference. Concurrently, without a more sophisticated understanding of those particularly extreme expressions of rage which indicate serious mental disorder, we will not be able to address the complexity and multidimensional nature of black rage. We will not be able to understand the psychological displacement of grief and pain into rage. And without that understanding, the deeper dimensions of black rage cannot be acknowledged, nor the psychological wounds it masks attended to. None of the successful black people quoted in the Newsweek article spoke about killing rage. Yet in the aftermath of the train incident, I heard many well-off black people express their identification with the killer. They described incident after incident in which they found themselves suppressing the longing to violently respond to verbal racist statements and or assault. Even though I experienced killing rage, I was appalled by the intensity of those feelings. They did not lead me to feel any covert, passive-aggressive pleasure about the train incident, even though I heard many wealthy and privileged black folks express pleasure. These revelations surprised me, since so many of these folks spend their working and intimate lives in the company of white colleagues, friends, and loved ones. Listening to them, it was clear that they felt no militant rage about the way white supremacy exploits and oppresses black people, but collectively, they were enraged by the reality that they are not exempt from racist assault. End of track 1. Reading resumes on page 27. To continue, turn the cassette over. Page 28. Their rage surfaces. They make these.
Wait. Okay. I was making sure that it was going seamlessly, and now apparently this is a new voice. I wonder if this new voice will read better. That white lady sounds like she's about to take a shit every single time she's like reading something. She's like, "Oh my god!" And then like, I don't know how you can be that like. How she messes up so many times. I'm just like, is this that hard for you to read? Because I can still like do it better than you. This is going faster than I thought. But there was something that it was getting at that, like, I did have some of that highlighted. Specifically when she says, and I want your opinion on this because I don't have anything to contribute necessarily on that thought, but listening to them, it was clear that they felt no militant rage about the way white supremacy exploits and oppresses black people, but collectively they were enraged by the reality that they are not exempt from racist assault.
And that right there feels like a disconnect to me, because how can you have one without the other? You know, it doesn't necessarily mean that you would need to feel militant rage towards the white people you know, because clearly if they are, you know, like your friends and loved ones that she's referring to, they're not the racist motherfuckers this is being directed at that are white supremacists. I don't know how you can feel that enraged by the reality that they're not exempt from racist assault without feeling militant rage about the way that white supremacy exploits and oppresses black people. Because to me, those are tied because of where class intersects here. And maybe that's part of what she is trying to get to the bottom of here, because she's specifically addressing this amongst upper class Black people. That maybe that is a point of privilege that she's pointing out. I don't know.
Well, and like from my end, I would not necessarily count that as privilege, because obviously, to an extent, it is, and to an extent, it is not. Like, I mean, or they wouldn't have this problem, or they would not feel like they should be exempt from these things. Which it makes me wonder too. Like, I mean, I'm not shitting on any old not talk shows, sitcoms. But like, there was this whole thing with the 80s and 90s, like with sitcoms, that was like, oh, this is the good Black family. And so that kind of feeds into this this idea. It's like, you think that it's positive, but in some kinds of ways it can sometimes be the exact opposite of that.
Well, even
it's
like for example,
something that you aspire to, but in reality, this is not how people are really viewed by the system itself.
Right. It's like, okay, in Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, the whole premise for the fucking story is he was getting in trouble in Philadelphia, living in what was not a wealthy neighborhood, and he's saved by his wealthy aunt and uncle.
Yeah.
As if wealth changes any of the dynamics, really, when it comes down to it, of any of the shit that you're potentially going to face as a Black person in America. Like, there's certain things, like, does having wealth make life a little easier? Sure, but does it change the systemic racism that's fucking?
And there's things like that about, like, the Cosby Show. Obviously, there are problems there, but one thing that I did not know, but I don't know if a whole lot of people know, that with Lisa Bonet, like, she was not on there for a long time, or for the entire time, because there were issues personally with them, that she was not seen as a fit role model because of her personal life. And so that was why they kind of did a spinoff, and she kind of had these, but she didn't get along with Cosby because he was,
goodness.
Yeah, I mean, she already did not get along with him even before all of this came out. And it was because she was seen as this misfit, like, weird girl. And so she's already being kind of like pushed out quietly from these things because she doesn't fit this little cookie cutter kind of lifestyle.
How hypocritical, though, coming from the guy who was drugging and raping women.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Yeah, I clicked on something that was like her talking about her experience with him. And it ended up, she really didn't say a whole lot. I don't remember, but it did go through her history of being on the show, and how, I mean, obviously she's not normal looking or acting. Like, she carries herself differently. And so I guess they just did not like the personality that came with her being herself.
Too raw for him. Too real.
Yeah. I'll start again. We actually only have a couple pages left.
Okay.
Just believing that doing so will mean they will be accepted as equals. When they are not treated as equals by the whites they have admired, subordinated their integrity to, they are shocked. Again, it must be stated that their rage is not a militant rage of the way white supremacy exploits and or oppresses Black people collectively. It is a narcissistic rage rooted in the ideology of hierarchical privilege that says they, not all Black people, should be treated better. They see themselves as worthy. Unlike underclass and underprivileged Black people, they have a sense of entitlement. And it is the sense that they will be selected out and treated better, bred into them at birth by their class values, that erupts into rage when white folks arbitrarily choose to make no distinction between a black person from an elite class and someone from the underclass.
Mm-hmm. There it is.
Yeah, she gets hard into class here.
Yeah. And it's much needed. It's much needed. I don't know why, but if you've still got that playing, I'm not hearing it.
I don't. I'm making sure that I was where because I highlighted some of this, and now I'm like, it's because I keep stopping it and starting it, and I like kind of lose where I'm at. But also this voice sounds a little bit more muffled than the last one to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't know what you wanted to say to that.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
I know where I'm at. I found it.
Oh, okay. I was like literally counting down the lines on page 28.
Yeah.
Like,
I know where I'm at. I found it. I didn't know what you wanted to say because I was like trying to stop it at like a specific mark.
The only thing I had said was nailed it, because she, what, 4 or 5 sentences after I said that is like, she says, it's a narcissistic rage rooted in the ideology of hierarchical privilege that says they, not all black people, should be treated better. They see themselves as more deserving. So that was what she was getting at, is they feel that, there is that point of privilege from having wealth of like, wait, we're exempt from racism now, right? And it's like, nope, because it's still inherent in too many other facets, that even being of a wealthier class, it's not going to protect you. For fuck's sake, look at, we've got shit happening over the last.
I feel like the wealthier you get, the more people are going to try to take. It's all cutthroat, like all of it's cutthroat all the time.
Well, it becomes a point for racial profiling and targeting too. Look at how many incidences we've had in the last few years of wealthy black people being pulled over for driving very expensive cars that they fucking own and being arrested by cops, presuming that they're driving a stolen car, no matter how much they tell them, no, this is my fucking vehicle, the shit's still happening. So it's like your wealth isn't going to protect you from systemic racism. Yeah. It can't. The only way to fucking change that is to completely overthrow this fucking racist system. Every bit of it. Because it's dependent on that shit to continue. That's all. Rant over.
I'm trying to hit it. It's not going.
And even though some whites may respond to the rage of successful blacks by dismissing it as whining, plenty of other white people respond by rewarding them for wearing the mantle of victimhood. Pimping white guilt in competitive workplaces is seen by some individual successful blacks as a useful networking strategy, not unlike those used by white folks who pimp shared white genealogy, background, schooling, and so forth. When ass-kicking, sucking face, and brown-nosing do not work to counter racist barriers, it is no wonder that these individuals who have compromised to make it harbor repressed pathological rage that may be more intense than any rage felt by an underclass black person who has never trusted white people or endeavored to please them to receive rewards. All the public attention that the rage of successful blacks is receiving, and the train incident represents a perversion of this rage, since the suspect suggested in his notes that he was angry because he had done all the right things to succeed and should have had no problems, strategically trivializes both the actual, concrete, brutal, oppressive manifestations of racism in this society, as well as resistance to that racism. Page 29. Mass media's trivialization of black rage reinforces white denial that white supremacy exists, that it is institutionalized, perpetuated by a system that condones the dehumanization of black people by encouraging everyone to dismiss rage against racism as in no way a response to concrete reality, since the black folks they see complaining are affluent. Concurrently, affluent blacks are rarely linking their rage to any progressive challenge and critique of white supremacy rooted in solidarity with the black masses. Made to feel ashamed that they or anyone else dare to even speak about rage at racial discrimination, often privileged class black people are the group most eager to silence discussions of militant rage because they are not interested in fundamentally challenging and changing white supremacist capitalist patriarchy. They simply want equal access to privilege within the existing structure. However, when they speak their narcissistic rage, public trivialization of it leads to the mocking of all black rage, to censorship and repression. The black rage that white power wants to suppress is not the narcissistic whine of the black privileged classes. It is the rage of the downtrodden and oppressed that could be mobilized to mount militant resistance to white supremacy. It is useful for white supremacist capitalist patriarchy to make all black rage appear pathological rather than identify the structure wherein that rage surfaces. At times, black rage may express itself pathologically. However, it also can express itself in ways that lead to constructive empowerment. Black rage against injustice, against systems of domination, particularly as it is expressed in black youth culture, is mirrored in the rebellion against the white supremacist bourgeois sensibility expressed by white youth. Calling attention to this connection in a recent interview in Art Forum, radical gay filmmaker John Waters comments, "One thing that I find fascinating now that my generation has kids and those kids are rebelling is that if they're white, the only way they can rebel is to be black." Page 30. "My generation marched for Martin Luther King Jr., but they didn't want their kids to be blacks. That's the difference between my generation and their kids." This is a generation of kids who are tired of racism and white supremacy, who are less willing to engage in denial, a generation that may be willing to launch organized collective resistance. White and black conservatives alike fear them and want to wipe out both their sense of connectedness and any possibility that they might join together to engage in processes of radical politicization that would transform this nation. Racist white adults want their children to fear blackness so that they will not cross race boundaries and unite in political solidarity. They want them to see black rage as always and only pathological, rather than as a just response to an unjust situation. These bourgeois whites, like many of their black counterparts, do not want rage against the status quo to assume the form of strategic resistance. Hence their mutual investment in mocking and trivializing black rage. The rage of the oppressed is never the same as the rage of the privileged. One group can change their lot only by changing the system. The other hopes to be rewarded within the system. Public focus on black rage, the attempt to trivialize and dismiss it, must be subverted by public discourse about the pathology of white supremacy, the madness it creates. We need to talk seriously about ending racism if we want to see an end to rage. White supremacy is frightening. It promotes mental illness and various dysfunctional behaviors on the part of whites and non-whites. It is the real and present danger. It is the real and present danger, not black rage.
That.
I was kind of losing it there for a second. Just because she completely acknowledges the struggle with white people trying to silence other white people that are talking about this.
Yep.
And I have
Grew
been
up with that.
subjected to it myself
Right.
with my family. And it's just amazing to see it put into words.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's the thing. Like, I mean, I personally can't relate as far as my family goes because my family is a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
But I've seen this happen in other affluent white families that didn't want their kids to necessarily be hanging out with anybody who was not white. Like, oh, you have pigment, you must be a bad influence. Like, what? You know, I've seen it happen. I grew up in a city called Grand Blanc, the Great White, Big White. Gee, I wonder why it's called that. If it's one of those things that was very frustrating, especially for those kids, because most of them didn't take on that fucking indoctrination and rebelled against their parents. Like, I don't give a fuck them. But there were some kids that were completely fucking like taken with it. One of them was a kid that had moved up to Michigan from somewhere down south. I can't recall where, because I'm recollecting this from like 6th or 7th grade. It's been a while. But this kid was so indoctrinated with racist fucking shit that he didn't know how to handle himself coming into an area like that, that while it was predominantly white wealthy people, it was also black wealthy people, brown wealthy people, and then a sprinkling of those of us who were not wealthy. You know, but the majority of that town is wealthy. And he had the audacity. He started a fight with one of my friends, called him the N-word, and then wanted to play the victim when that friend's older brother leaped over the lunch tables and beat his fucking ass for it. Like, nope, racism is not fucking tolerated here. You know, it was one of those things that even the other white kids who you could see like the holy shit coming across their face, because that was the type of shit their parents wanted them to act like, that they were completely appalled by, just going holy fuck and cheering for, you know, my friend beating the shit out of this racist fucking kid. But it's one of those things that you still see ingrained, that's part of it. He bought the bullshit from his parents telling him that being white makes you fucking better than everybody else.
Mine wasn't always said that way explicitly. I grew up in a similar sort of environment once I was put into that private school. I went to Christian Heritage Academy in Del City, Oklahoma, and my best friend was a Filipino Catholic girl, and my mom was fine with it. I never got to spend the night with anybody until I was like 16 years old. And I feel like the only reason that she'd let me spend the night with her specifically was because Filipino Catholics are more strict than my mom. And so their family was awesome, but like, it was just like, you're here, you're at the house, you're not going anywhere. And so it was like, it was why she was okay with it. But at the same time, that school taught that Catholics are not really Christians and they're all going to hell, which means that pretty much any country that is not white that has been conquered by Catholicism, it's just a whole bunch of not white people that are going to hell because they didn't have the right brand of colonialism. It's really fucked. And I was more poor, whereas my friend was more well off. My dad like paid child support to pay for the tuition for the school, and my mom worked at the school to get half off tuition. So we were the poor kids, and it would just be like the first time I wore fucking American Eagle to something, they were like, "Oh my god, you have like on brand," and I'm like, I don't give a fuck. But I believed everything at the time that I was there. I didn't really rebel. I was just weirder than everybody. So like I hung out with kids that were just like separate from all of the cliques and stuff. But
You'd kind of need to in that fucking type of situation. Fuck. I mean, especially if they're buying the hateful shit, hook, line, and sinker.
well, I just don't know why it was like I was already hanging out with gays and lesbians and trans people and Filipino Catholics. So like everybody was the thing that did not fit in there. And like I could have fit in, I think, if I had wanted to, but like my brain just did not work the same way. And I really didn't understand. Like, even when I believed everything, it was like, I'm just copying. I'm just copying and pasting. I'm just copying and rewriting it. I'm just like, it was just memorization.
Right. And regurgitation of,
Yeah. And
this
I
is
mean, I
what
don't
we
know
want
if
to hear
I
from you.
mentally was just like, I'm stuck here anyway, so I might as well pretend that I believe it. Because as soon as I graduated, it all fell out. Like, not like immediate, like it all fell out, and then I had to rebuild all of it. So I had some bad rebuilding of all of it. But it was like, as soon as that influence was out of my life, I was no longer a part of it.
Tends to be a thing when it comes to people actually taking a step away from that church-related indoctrination that reinforces sexism and racism and all those other things. Of like, as soon as you separate yourself from that source of bigotry, then you can shed all the bullshit and go, okay, so much of that was not me.
Well, and I think so much of it, I guess, was just me being the woman I was supposed to be, being subservient, listening to every single thing that they're saying. So then I just take my subservience somewhere else. And then I'm thinking I'm being subservient to things that I was taught not to be subservient to, but I'm also not a fucking asshole. Like, I held racist viewpoints. I held sexist viewpoints. I held viewpoints that are completely wrong. But I also was not this kind of person that some of these people are, that would just walk up to people and call them those specific slurs. Like, I there's no way that I could actively, purposely be mean and be overly controlling to people the way that some of these people were. And so it was weird that like my obedience actually became the thing that turned me into not being obedient.
Tends to be kind of the way it works when you get fed up with having to be subservient and obedient to things, and then you start to question, why should I be?
Yeah.
Like, oh, because innie instead of outie? That's dumb.
Yeah, basically I became less and less popular over time because it was just like, okay, I'll concede to this and I'll concede to this. And then after I like compile all the things that I've conceded to into one little ball of bullshit, I'm just like, oh, you know what? No, this is fuck you. I'm leaving. And then people get really, really, really mad. Like, you can't even leave. Like, you can't even leave. You can't even like not say anything and just go. They will lose it.
They'll
They
talk and
always do.
harass you like, so why haven't you been at
Yeah.
church?
Yeah.
They'll show up at your door.
Or
Like,
they'll come into your streams asking you why you're not shutting the fuck up and that you're
right,
so emotional when clearly we've not been emotional this entire time.
right.
I mean, a little bit, but
Well, not like the troll was trying to say.
yeah, it's just weird how they like pin emotionalism on things, and you're just like, I'm just talking, and you don't
Right.
like it.
Right. When it comes down to it, that's pretty much what it is. Of, you know, like, especially in the case of that troll right there, man mad that woman speaking. Fuck off, guy.
I've seen this episode so many times.
It's one of those things where it's like, that's why it didn't anger me, why all I could do was laugh, like, oh my god, because how many fucking times in my life have I heard, well, you would just be so much happier being barefoot, pregnant, in a kitchen, not talking to anybody, and taking orders from a man. And I'm fucking mad that women aren't doing this, so I'm gonna fucking lay my fucking micropene on the table here with all my insecurities. And like, come on, guy. I mean, I have heard that same bullshit from so many people throughout my life that it's like, that doesn't faze me. I'm
No, yeah, no,
you know,
I felt really important.
right. Like, he took the time out of his day to come troll us and tell us that vagina means we should shut up. Like, okay, guy. Don't care.
He's like, your man won't even bring you hot dogs when he's supposed to, so why don't you just shut up?
It's like, oh, good burn. You really roasted that one. Yeah. No.
I think we could probably still just keep to 2. I guess I just thought that it was going longer than it really did. And next time we'll just have 2 chapters and not an introduction. So the next one will be cool, but then the next 2 after that are going to be specific to race and sexism. There's like 4 whole chapters on race and sexism. So that's going to be like 2 whole weeks. Yeah. I think that's it. If you want to end this, and then we can jump on a call and talk about what to do differently next time with the audiobook part.
Right on. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Stay tuned. We'll be back tomorrow night, usual time, 8 p.m. To do the weekly current events stream. Natalie will share the link to the book to you in the group chat. So that way you can access
For everybody
that.
else, this was actually really hard to find as an audiobook. Wade helped us out with a large fee to get access to some things. But Natalie, we are talking about changing the email and stuff. So we'll talk there because there's some things that we have to do in regards to that. But for everybody else, it's Killing Rage by Bell Hooks. And the only way that you're going to get it is if you go to Amazon or wherever you go. But it's not really on audio at all unless you want to pay $150.
Right. If memory serves right from the other day when I was trying to dig for audio, again, I did see some links for an ebook that should be cheaper to download than ordering a copy, but I think both are available on Amazon. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on it. But either way, the paperback definitely is.
I got mine on Prime, and so you got it the day after I sent it.
Yeah, they were quick about it. They got that shit there in a hurry.
Yeah. So yeah,
if you want that to read along, that's where you can find it. And
we're going to do a chat too. Hopefully whoever can join into that so that we can talk about what to do next time. Specifically because this website has a lot of other resources that we might be able to use also. Right.
There's probably a lot of books that are on our reading list for the Rev Left Book Club that we can find on there right off the bat instead of having to dig and to find those. So that's,
it's a legit source. It's just that it's expensive. So like we only did it because we can have access to a lot of things.
Right.
So yeah.
It's going to definitely be an important tool for a lot of the Rev Left Book Club, because while a lot of the stuff that we've been able to find so far, we were able to get either ebooks and or audiobooks from like the Marxist archives and stuff and be able to download those for free. But this one definitely was not. And there's others that are on that list that I highly doubt if we'll be able to find in there. So thank you again, Wade. This is a huge resource that is going to help push this Rev Left Book Club forward for a long time to come. Thank you. You fucking rock, bro. Like, dude, that was some serious fucking solidarity right there.
It was. I'm glad we at least figured it out halfway. But yeah, that was the main problem. So he is a lifesaver for sure.
Absolutely. All right. Well, give me a moment and I'll do the thing with the music. Do this. Let's see. That tab. Aha. Okay. And there's that. And voila. Good night, everybody. Thank you. Much love to all of you. And we'll see you tomorrow night for current events.
Good night.
Unclear on scales. There's absolutely